Calaroga Shark Media. Hi and welcome to Ghost. This episode is titled, For Whom the Quarters Toll.
The RFK Bridge has witnessed more than its fair share of tragedy over its long, storied existence. From fatal car accidents to tormented souls leaping from its dizzying suspended heights, the ghostly echoes of past calamities seem to forever linger in the steel and concrete bones of the mammoth structure. To most commuters enduring the bridge's perpetual gridlock that clogs the arterial tangle of expressways leading to its spans, such phantasmal lore is little more than atmospheric lore to pass the idle hours. But to those unlucky few night maintenance workers and roving security guards who have glimpsed the wrath of a dark, damned figure roaming its desolate toll plazas and maintenance catwalks, the paranormal menaces are all too real. For you see, the malign spirit that haunts the RFK Bridge/Triborough is a single-minded revenant, hell-bent on exacting a twisted vengeance upon the current bridge administration, one whose grudges are far more corporeal and bureaucratic than mere existential outrage over the severing of earthly bonds. It started shortly after the Port Authority and MTA announced the demolition of the antique toll booths and coin machines in 2022, moving to an automated gantry-based payment system that scanned each vehicle's license plate, charging their account accordingly. The move towards a seamless, cashless commute was hailed as a much-needed modernization measure that would ease traffic congestion and prevent the proliferation of untaxed pass-throughs. But to one particular bridge troll, the long-retired and recently deceased Archibald Dunworthy, the changes represented a bitter betrayal of the highest order, one he would refuse to tolerate, even from beyond the grave. Dunworthy was old school through and through, a 1960s-era toll collector known to the bridge regulars as Old Quartered Windsor, for his meticulously brushed silver coiffure and iconic change-dispensing headpiece. He ruled his dingy, sweat-stained toll booth kingdom like a feudal baron for over 5 decades, ritualistically relieving each driver of their coinage pittance for the privilege of safe passage. After retiring in the early 2000s, Dunworthy spent his dwindling twilight years assailing the authority with lawsuits and injunction demands to halt any talk of automating his beloved bridge's toll plazas. He famously showed up to every high-level policy meeting, waving his antique official toll-taker's cap and shaking his tarnished brass changemaker to punctuate each tirade. When Old Windsor finally shuffled off the mortal coil in 2020 at the ripe old age of 96, just after the authority announced its final automation plans, his hateful rants became whispered promises of eternal spite from beyond the grave. Now, as a tormented phantasm doomed to haunt the iconic triple-arched bridge for all eternity, Archibald Dunworthy is making good on those vows of vengeance, in increasingly unhinged, frightful, and even deadly fashion. The first incident was reported on the Sunday overnight shift a few months after the toll plaza renovations were completed. Officer Rudy Valles of Bridge and Tunnel Officers Patrol was making his standard rounds of the empty toll lanes when he spied what looked like a familiar figure ambling across the traffic barriers in his peripheral glare. At first, Valles thought his exhausted, sleep-deprived corneas were playing tricks, maybe projecting the form of a bridge worker or fellow cop milling about where they obviously shouldn't be. But when the shadowed silhouette stopped under the sickly orange lamps to stare in Rudy's direction, the uniformed officer very clearly made out its dread lineaments, the slump-shouldered bearing, the distinctive, obsolete toll-taker's cap creased low over one hollow, scouring socket. Old Windsor's uniform stunk of mold and charnel rot, as if its decrepit blazer and slacks had been interred in a rain-soaked pauper's coffin. Even from this distance, Valles could see the sickly, translucent hue of decaying flesh, knitting in flaking eskers beneath the wraith thing's tattered sleeves. Its one remaining eyeball roamed feverishly, trailing viscous streams of aqueous morbid fluid in its scorched, suppurating wake. "You aren't authorized on these lanes!" Valles managed to call out, proud of his measured tone despite the surreal, nauseous dread coiling deep in his hindgut. The shadowy figure only spasmed in reply, issuing forth a low, guttural eruption of scowling venom. When its lipless maw cracked open, Rudy involuntarily took a step backward at the sight of its blackened, rotted tongue and jags of tarnished brass where teeth should be. "Quartered Tols," the thing groaned through its pulpy, distorted facade of decay. It began shambling forward again, reaching into its shredded inner jacket pocket to withdraw a decrepit hand-crank changemaker, the type of antiquated coin dispenser the MTA was still transitioning away from a century ago. When old Windsor spasmed that worm-devoured fist at Valles again, unleashing another scythe-like scream, the dull instrument in its clutches sprang to flickering phantasmal life, oozing skeins of animated copper and nickel coins. With unearthly swiftness, Dunworthy's remains flung out its ethereal hand, hag-nailing a viciously whirling stream of gritty apparition-imbued shrapnel in the terror-struck officer's direction. Valles took off in a dead sprint, zigzagging for all he was worth as the soul-tating Franken phantasm of currency shredded Jersey barrier and plasteel lane divider alike, with each warded lash of its hand-cranked animancer arcana. He barely found shelter behind an HVAC shed before the last slivers of haunted tollbooth species shrilled into its warped planks and girders, reducing them to splinter-shorn scrap. That hellish encounter was just the opening salvo in Old Windsor's dark, sorcerous campaign against the Port Authority and its bridge modernization plans. In the weeks and months that followed, reports of ghostly toll-taker manifestations proliferated throughout the bridge's maintenance logs and overnight incident blotters. Roving teams of bridge tenders began detecting distorted, mildewed residues of antique brass cash coins adhering to toll plaza surfaces and newly installed RFID sensors, appearing as if from thin air. In several instances, freshly poured cement and rubberized road stripping was discovered to have been corrupted by the solidified impression of an unseen figure's gnarled, cloven hooves. But it was the grisly double murder of two Easy Pass consultants that secured Old Windsor's place as one of the most maligned and pernicious haunters ever recorded. On the night of Christmas Eve, a pair of MTA contractors were found lashed, flayed and crucified upon the monolithic steel gantries of the RFK's new Easy Pass tolling system. The bodies, which detectives initially dismissed as a ritualistic mob revenge slaying, had been drained of every drop of blood and gore, only for the atrocious crimson vital essences to be discovered adhering the tortured, ruined husks in the exact coinage denominations and sums the deceased techs would have been depositing into a traditional toll system. After that unspeakable atrocity, any further consideration of replacing the bridge's remaining coin-operated toll bastions was permanently abandoned. PANYNJ work crews dared not set foot within 1,000 feet of the blighted spans after nightfall for fear of reprisals. Commuters too became leery of Old Windsor's otherworldly reprisals, those unlucky few who failed to pay their Easy Pass respects or neglected to roll through RFID toll lanes with sufficient balances, often later discovered strange stains of mold and bloodied spare change accumulating inside their car's ventilation system. Horrific honking dirges cursed straight from decaying pipe organ asthma lungs would pour from their dashboard grills on isolated stretches of roadway, accusing them in ghostly groaning turibus of being cheaters and remittance-thieving scofflaws. By 2025, the Triborough Bridge Authority reconsidered the name change to RFK Bridge, deciding the now politically toxic initials were cursed. But they went a step further, officially reinstating the original Triborough moniker, deciding that after the years-long scourge of Old Windsor's malicious haunting, it was more brand appropriate to align the iconic span with the original, antiquated three-borough system of coin-based transit taxation its roiled bones had represented for over half a century. For commuters and bridge workers who have been subjected to the inescapable terrors of Archibald, Quartered Windsor, Dunworthy's phantasmal wrath, It's little comfort that today's officials formally recognize the easy pass automation as a doomed transit of hubris. Out on the desolate graveyard expanses of the Triborough's ghostly, coin-blasted toll plazas, all they can hear is the demonic cranking of a billion morbid cashiers groaning into eternity, each one dispensing an endless, haunted requiem of murderous, blood-stained vengeance against those who would dare to modernize.
Ghost is a Calaroga Shark media production, written and hosted by Alexander Ian McIntyre, produced by Mark Francis, executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. Portions of this podcast may have been created with the assistance of AI.
This show, along with hundreds of others from Calaroga Shark Media, is available commercial-free on any player, hassle-free. Just look for the link in the episode or show notes. Ghost now has merch. Find shirts, mugs, and more with the Ghost logo for sale at our merch store. There's free shipping and 10% off now with the coupon NEWMERCH10. Did we say there's free shipping? Check out all the goods at calaroga.com, that's CALOROGA.com, or just look for the link in the show notes. Thanks for supporting the show, we really appreciate it.
Calaroga Shark Media.